Greetings from the Arcturians and Orion. And as usual, they just asked me to check the latest news on the Russia-Ukraine war and President Putin. And I go to Google and I'm checking the news and I'm like, all right, well, which news do you want me to focus on in particular? And they're drawing my attention to this news story from The Independent here, which says Ukraine-Russia war. Trump sympathizes with Putin's NATO stance. Now, I'm not going into that news article from The Independent, but that's the news headline there. And yeah, and from YouTube, from Times of India, and this is a YouTube video from Times of India. The headline here says, I understand Putin, Trump fumes at NATO, shows sympathy for Putin. Okay, so as I understand, in terms of what's going on here, is that Ukraine wants NATO membership. Ukraine wants to be a member of NATO, but Russia and President Putin is opposing that, is in opposition of that. But why is that causing a riot right now? It's like the Arcturians and Orion, they're saying, please, one thing at a time, one step at a time, and we need to prioritize the peace talks and the peace process in terms of stopping and halting the Russia-Ukraine war first. And they're saying no one needs to refuse Ukraine a NATO membership at some point down the line, at some point in the near future. But we must deal with the Russia-Ukraine war first. Right now, I'm just thinking and talking to the Arcturians and Orion. It's like, yeah, but President Putin is opposing Ukraine becoming a member of NATO. So even if the Russia-Ukraine war is sorted out, President Putin still will not want Ukraine to become a NATO member. So, yeah, but that's what the Arcturians and Orion just said. Through me, of course, I'm channeling their message just earlier, that no one needs to refuse Ukraine a NATO membership. or, no one should refuse Ukraine a NATO membership, which means even President Putin shouldn't get in the way, should not get in the way of Ukraine wanting a NATO membership, or Ukraine wanting to be a NATO member. They're saying if that's what Ukraine wants, then that's what Ukraine should be able to have. That's what Ukraine should be allowed to have it. So if Ukraine wants to be a member of NATO countries, then Ukraine should be allowed to have that. So, President Putin, the question arises here: why are you opposing Ukraine in terms of becoming a NATO member when that's what Ukraine wants? So why are you in opposition, President Putin? Why are you opposing that? Actually, doesn't it make sense? Like, Ukraine and President Zelenskyy of Ukraine, he must be feeling quite vulnerable, especially after Russia's aggression and Russia's war on Ukraine, and President Putin's war on Ukraine. So no wonder Ukraine and President Zelenskyy of Ukraine wants to join NATO and wishes to be one of the NATO member countries. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? After the Russian aggression on Ukraine, the Russian war on Ukraine, why wouldn't President Zelenskyy want to be a member of NATO? Because President Zelenskyy would want that kind of security from NATO, or becoming a member of NATO and becoming one of the NATO member countries, like Ukraine becoming one of the NATO member countries, especially after the Russian aggression and the Russian war on Ukraine. Yeah, because the Arcturians and Orion, they're saying that, yeah, because NATO will act as a security blanket for Ukraine. And it makes perfect sense to me, especially after the Russian aggression and Russian war on Ukraine. Like, why wouldn't Ukraine want to be a member of NATO? Because a NATO membership would be like a security blanket, or it will act as a security blanket for Ukraine and President Zelenskyy. And, and in that sense, a security blanket is like something that gives someone, meaning President Zelenskyy of Ukraine and also the country of Ukraine, a sense of safety, right? Especially when they are in a situation that makes them worried for their safety and security. And of course, Ukraine is in that kind of situation in terms of Russia's aggression and Russia's war on Ukraine. So no wonder Ukraine and President Zelenskyy wants a NATO membership and wishes to become one of the NATO member countries, because President Zelensky must be thinking and feeling like, what if President Putin and Russia decides to wage war against Ukraine again sometime in the future or sometime in the near future? So then, NATO or becoming a NATO member will act like a security blanket for Ukraine against Russian aggression and or against Russian war, or Russia, forcing another war onto Ukraine. But they're saying, can we focus on stopping Russia-Ukraine war first, please? As I said, or as we said, one thing at a time, one step at a time. Let's please focus on stopping Russia-Ukraine war first. The Arcturians and Orion, they're saying, can we stop the war first, please? To President Putin, President Trump, President Zelensky, to all of you. And also the current UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. And they're also giving me the former Prime Minister of UK, Boris Johnson, as well. Focus on stopping the war first. Over and out.